the mid-1990s, a gang of professional bank robbers raided cities across 7 states. Disguises and speed protected their identity from cameras and the police. They stole hundreds of thousands of dollars, always leaving a bomb to terrorize their victims. With no leads and little evidence, the FBI had to find the bandits before someone got killed.
Across the Midwest, a band of armed robbers struck banks at the rate of nearly 1 per month. They attacked with lightning precision and lethal force. They were in and out in 5 minutes. I'm Jim Kallstrom, former head of the FBI's New York office. The stakes were raised when the FBI discovered the robbers had an agenda beyond personal wealth. To stop these violent extremists, the FBI need to capture their terrorist leaders.
In 1994, the citizens of Ames, Iowa enjoyed the peaceful life provided by a small college town. Many newcomers had moved to Ames because of the area's low crime rate. On January 25th at 10:30 in the morning, 2 men entered a bank in town.
All right, this is a robbery! Everybody down on the floor! Down, down, down on the ground! Down, get on the floor!
They wore ski masks and held semi-automatic pistols. They ordered everyone to the floor. The teller managed to set off a silent alarm without being seen. The FBI office in nearby Des Moines was alerted to the robbery in progress. The agency had primary investigative jurisdiction in crimes involving federally insured money. Agents immediately responded, but they were 30 miles away from the bank. The bandits quickly emptied the cash drawers.
Don't look at me, face the ground.
One of them pulled out what appeared to be a bomb. He warned that no one should move for 5 minutes or it would explode. The employees and customers evacuated as soon as they could. The local police cordoned off the bank as explosive experts worked inside. The bomb proved to be a diversion. 2 road flares bound with duct tape. The employees described how one of the gunmen leaped over the counter to grab the money. They grabbed thousands in cash and were in and out of the bank in less than 5 minutes. Agents interviewed the witnesses.
So did you guys want to add anything else?
They said the gunmen sometimes used Spanish when talking to each other. The security camera provided photographs of the robbery. Ski masks effectively hid the faces of the assailants. But investigators had images of their disguises and their weapons. 9mm semi-automatics. Because the perpetrators wore gloves, they did not leave any fingerprints. Detectives used electrostatic tape to recover a footprint from the counter. The precautions taken by the bandits had effectively obscured their identities. Special Agent Ken Moore of the Des Moines, Iowa FBI field office was immediately concerned that they were dealing with dangerous professionals.
Now, most bank robbers try to enter banks as quietly as possible, go up to one teller counter. and proceed to rob the bank and then leave as quietly as they can. These individuals came in very violently, fast.
Agent Moore wanted to apprehend the suspects as quickly as he could. But the FBI had nothing of value to lead to their identity. Several weeks later, a communique came into the Des Moines office. It alerted area FBI of a February 15th bank robbery in Davenport, Iowa. Agents contacted the Davenport office to see if the incident might be related.
Hello? Yes, well, I think
The agent described two gunmen wearing ski masks and black overcoats that had invaded a Davenport bank. The thieves used the same Spanish phrases as the Des Moines bandits. They also hopped over the counter to empty the cash drawers. There was one significant difference. This time, the bandits left a real explosive, a pipe bomb instead of a fake. Fortunately, the detonator was missing. Disarming it had slowed down the investigation.
What that device does is it requires more manpower that could be out conducting an active investigation. Instead, they're at the bank making sure things are safe.
Investigators believed that the similarities between the incidents were more than coincidental.
After the Davenport bank robbery, we realized that the same individuals were responsible for both bank robberies. This was our first connection to possible serial bank robbers.
Okay. See you later. Have a good night.
In the next 4 months, Cincinnati, Green Bay, and Kansas City suffered similar crimes.
There appeared to be a pattern of their robberies. There appeared to be two regions where they were robbing banks, the Midwest region as well as the Ohio region. We were trying to logically connect those two regions and why banks were being robbed that way.
The robberies occurred between 10 and 11 in the morning when banks were less populated. Each time, the bandits were out in less than 5 minutes, always leaving an inert bomb as they fled. The wide geographic spread of targets made their next moves impossible to predict.
I'll get back with you.
The FBI needed to find some evidence that would lead to the suspects. On June 8, 1994, the bandits hit a bank in Springdale, Ohio. They drove away with over $11,000. A bystander saw them use a brown Chevrolet as their getaway car. On June 17th, a security guard became suspicious of a car on his employer's lot. It had been sitting for a week without anyone claiming it. He saw a police scanner. He also spotted a pager next to a stained $20 bill. A Springdale officer came out to check the car. He began a search to ascertain the vehicle's ownership. He made an effort to force open the glove compartment. A grenade tumbled out. The hand grenade turned out to be another inert explosive, but its presence linked the car to the bank robbery. Agents used the car's serial numbers to track down the dealership where it had been sold. They talked to the salesman who had handled the deal. The sale had been made less than 2 weeks earlier, but he couldn't give a description of the buyer. The dead ends left investigators feeling the pressure.
We were becoming frustrated because the escalation of violence seemed to have been increasing. They were more brazen, were brandishing firearms, scaring bank employees. They were scaring customers, leaving behind booby traps. So we were very frustrated and we were concerned.
On December 27th, the bandits finished 1994 with their 12th robbery in as many months. They hit a bank outside St. Louis. This time, there were 4 gunmen.
Now we were concerned over possible takeovers of banks, possible entry into the bank vault. With 4 people, there's a lot more they can do.
Bystanders at the St. Louis robbery saw the bandits put on their ski masks before entering the building. The teller got a glimpse of one of them inside the bank. These witnesses helped FBI artists make composite sketches of the suspects. The FBI distributed the drawings to other agencies and the media.
It was slightly curved.
They hoped it might bring someone forward who might know something more. The television and news reports generated hundreds of calls into the FBI offices. Agents followed up on all credible tips, but none provided any lead value. The assailants communicated with the media as well. They sent letters and cartoons to newspapers. The correspondents ridiculed federal agents and their attempts to catch them. In one letter, the gang dubbed themselves the Midwestern Bank Bandits. The bandits sent another message to authorities in one of their getaway cars. An investigator searched a vehicle used in a robbery near St. Louis. On the front seat, the gang had left a newspaper clipping about Timothy McVeigh, the Oklahoma City bomber. In less than 2 years, the bandits had hit at least 15 banks across the Midwest. By the end of August 1995, agents from 7 states and FBI headquarters gathered in Louisville, Kentucky. All the offices were now working together to identify and apprehend the suspects. All information and leads were to be channeled through a single office, then distributed to the others.
Right, we'll work on that. See if we can't raise the serial number or something off it.
Special Agent Moore in Des Moines served as the point man.
The meeting also resulted in all case agents going back to their office, reviewing all files to see if there's anything they may have missed or anything of lead value that might assist us in identifying the suspects.
Supervisory Special Agent David Welker found a phone tip that came into his Cincinnati office after a June 1994 robbery. The informant had named 2 men as the leaders of the Midwestern Bank Bandits, Peter Langan and Richard Guthrie.
Well, you determined at the time that they had criminal backgrounds, that as we set out our leads, that they had been arrested in Georgia for the robbery of a Pizza Hut. And then we found also at the time that the U.S. Secret Service had looked at Langan as a result of threats made to the president.
At the arrest, police seized semi-automatic guns and grenades, weapons similar to those used by the bank bandits. The suspects served a brief prison sentence before being released. Agent Welker was able to pull their mugshots. He compared the photographs with the artist's sketches made after the St. Louis robberies.
And they were so close then that it was phenomenal. It appeared that the composite artist used these photographs to draw the composite drawings. That's how close they were.
Agents now had names for the gunmen. In pursuing them, the FBI was about to uncover a far more deadly plot than bank robbery. In 1995, the FBI hunted the Midwestern Bank Bandits. The day before Thanksgiving, the 4 gunmen struck another bank in St. Louis, their 21st robbery. Their disguise included ATF hats, the same caps worn by federal agents from the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. They also left their signature pipe bomb. None of these explosive devices had gone off. they had either been inert or lacking detonators. By now, agents knew how to defuse the bombs themselves. They weren't going to let the ruse slow the investigation down anymore. Supervisory Special Agent David Welker of the Cincinnati office had names for 2 of the bandits. But Peter Langan and Richard Guthrie were living underground, surfacing only when they struck another bank.
Clearly, we've identified the right people. We're trying to develop as much information about these people and their contacts as possible. But the best part about it is we have leads to follow.
In the intervening months, the informant who had provided the names had moved from Ohio.
The first set of robberies to tear gas
Canister.
Special Agent Ed Woods of the Cincinnati FBI field office tracked the informant to Georgia, where he lived with his new wife and child.
This fella had been an associate of Langan and Guthrie in the past, had removed himself from that lifestyle and was starting a new life for himself. And I think he was ready to put all that behind him. So when I interviewed him, he cooperated fully.
I need to ask you a few questions.
The informant had met Langan in 1991 at a white supremacist rally.
The Bible says, "Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife," and the black neighbor. Right.
They shared similar beliefs about race and government.
Don't need it. Don't need it.
A year later, Langan proclaimed his intention to form the Aryan Republican Army. It was going to start a revolution against Washington and its federal agencies like the FBI and ATF.
It's your tax money they're taking.
Langan had been inspired by the Order, an established terrorist group.
I mean, you know what I'm saying? You're breaking your back. You know what I'm saying?
The Order had financed their racist agenda by robbing $4 million from banks and armored cars.
Hey, how's it going?
That evening, Langan introduced Guthrie as his compatriot.
I'll explain all about that. We can,
2 months before the first bank robbery, they asked the informant to become a member of the Aryan Army.
Well, I've got some stuff here. I think that
He declined to join the new gang,
we can certainly use some of it. Yeah, here.
but he did agree to pitch in.
What we got from this cooperating witness was the scope of their activities, the surgical planning for their bank robbery activities, the fact that now we learned for the first time that their activities aren't just bank robbery and criminal matters. It relates to white supremacy.
The informant helped Langan case the bank in Springdale, Ohio. But before that June 1994 robbery, the informant had a change of heart and cut himself off from the bandits.
Concert sometimes, things like that.
He had participated enough to be charged as an
I'm gonna need you
accomplice.
to help as we go on here.
The FBI promised not to prosecute him if he
that'll be
assisted.
for right now.
They were ready
I
to make a
appreciate it.
deal to capture Langan and Guthrie.
Once we determined that they had broken off other white supremacist organizations to form their own, it certainly ratcheted the investigation up just another notch.
Agent Welker suspected it was only a matter of time before the Midwestern bank bandits turned their racial prejudice into violence. The gang was back in Cincinnati, hitting another bank in December 1995. During their escape, one of the bandits bumped into a teenager. The gunman demanded her purse. She refused to comply. Only the sound of approaching sirens prevented the young woman from being seriously hurt. Betting that the bandits were still in the area, Agent Welker brought the informant to Cincinnati.
You know the fellows that are involved.
Upon arriving, the informant agreed to re-enter the white supremacist movement.
Make sure that he has your pager.
Agents instructed him to page the FBI when he made contact
You
with
and
the
I stay in
suspects.
contact now. So, say what you
But investigators became frustrated when more than a week passed without any results.
Since he's been here for a week and a half and has provided no information at all and has arranged no meeting, has virtually done nothing, I was more than skeptical as to what this cooperating witness could do for us. And I was prepared to send him home because of my disbelief at the time.
At 2:30 in the morning of January 17th, 1996, the informant paged the FBI. The call roused investigators from sleep to a secret meeting. The informant claimed to have found Guthrie. He was finishing dinner with a friend when Guthrie unexpectedly showed up. The informant invented a reason for being in Cincinnati and engaged the suspect in small talk.
Got a minute, I can talk to you outside. Sure, come on. Hey, you got a minute?
Guthrie invited him out to his van to continue the conversation in private.
Where are you chilling?
While they sat in the parking lot, the suspect asked his old friend to reconsider joining the gang.
Some serious stuff here. You talking about a little bit.
Guthrie showed off an assault rifle and a bag of armor-piercing bullets.
Yeah.
The informant provided a partial license plate number and description of Guthrie's van. Agents still doubted his credibility.
So I had Agent Woods arrange to have the cooperating witness in the FBI office at 4 o'clock on Sunday afternoon. I didn't want him to know why he was there. I just wanted him to be there. And then I arranged for my division's polygraph examiner to be there, and I wanted a polygraph of him. I wanted to make sure that what he was telling us was true.
The informant agreed to take a lie detector test.
I think he's lying.
You think he's lying?
He's all over the place.
Give him a chance and he didn't tell
The
us.
examiner determined that the young man had been deceptive in his answers during the test.
I'm telling the truth. Listen.
The piece of paper there, this polygraph doesn't lie.
Listen,
He
I have
insisted he was
somebody
telling the
who
truth.
can make a quick phone call. Please, let me make one phone call.
One second.
I can prove it.
I'm
I
gonna
can
give you
prove it.
one more
phone
chance.
call. Yes,
One
come
phone
on.
call. Make it a good one.
To prove it, he placed a call to the friend with whom he had had dinner.
Hey, what's going on, man?
Good, man. Yeah.
The speakerphone allowed the agents to hear everything.
Hey, what happened with you and Guthrie, man? He took you out in the van. Yeah, Guthrie wants you in, man. Yeah.
Without prompting, the
Yeah,
friend
we did. We
immediately
spent some
asked
time
about his
together.
time with Guthrie.
So now we had to make a decision, and the decision is, do we believe the polygraph or do we believe the phone call? I think at the time, I think the decision we made was the right one. That is, we have to believe the phone call. It was an unprovoked response by the friend.
The informant arranged to meet Guthrie on Monday at their mutual friend's apartment. FBI agents assembled an arrest team. They staked out the location, ready to capture the suspect when he arrived. The informant waited inside the apartment. The friend did not know why the meeting had been arranged. Guthrie had promised to come sometime between 4 and 5 p.m. 5 o'clock came and went without the white supremacist arriving. The informant knew that more than his credibility was at stake. So was his cooperation agreement. If the FBI believed he had deceived them, they would turn him over to prosecutors for bank robbery. At 5:20, there was still no sign of Guthrie. It looked like the suspect would not show up. Outside, the arrest team grew impatient.
Hey, what's up? Yeah, he's here.
It was Guthrie on the phone. He said they could meet at a nearby pizza restaurant in 30 minutes.
Camel? All right, 30 minutes. Camel, you down?
Yeah, yeah.
The informant needed to get word to the arrest team. He told his buddy he was going out for cigarettes.
Hey, I'm sorry about the delay. Everything's taken care of, though.
The informant told the agents about the call.
Yeah. The meeting's been changed a little bit. We're meeting just a little bit up the road. Everything's still fine, though, okay?
I think he's telling us the truth.
I hope he is. Otherwise, he's going to jail. Okay, guys.
They alerted the SWAT team to the new location. Several cars set out for the pizza parlor. The agents could not help but wonder if this was the location or just another diversion. Along the way, traffic separated the arrest team. One agent was passing a convenience store parking lot when he spotted Guthrie. He turned around and radioed to the others that the suspect had been sighted. Guthrie got into his van and started driving. The agent stayed on the van's tail, hoping the rest of the team would catch up. He was alone, following a suspect considered highly dangerous. But he was determined not to let Richard Guthrie get away. In January 1996, the FBI pursued Richard Guthrie. The suspect was wanted for 22 bank robberies. An agent separated from the arrest team had spotted the suspect at a Cincinnati parking lot and began tailing his van. He reported by radio his progress to the others.
You got him in a cul-de-sac. Where are you?
Guthrie noticed that he was being followed. An informant had reported that he was armed with automatic weapons and armor-piercing bullets. The suspect tried to lose his tail. The arrest team caught up with the lone agent and joined the chase. Guthrie couldn't shake them.
Get him in that cul-de-sac.
He unwittingly turned into a cul-de-sac. Trapped, he abandoned his van. Agent Ed Wood sprinted right behind. He caught up to the gunman.
It was almost as if it was in slow motion where like you could almost read his mind, what he's thinking. He's thinking, I believe, is this it? Is this the last standoff of this white supremacist? And quite frankly, what I expected him to do was to turn and start firing.
Guthrie came to a riverbank. He had no escape. Agents boxed him in.
I've been in law enforcement for over 20 years, and I've never seen a look on a face like Guthrie's at that time. And Guthrie, as he was looking at us, he was deciding whether he wanted to die right then. He was deciding whether he wanted to pull a gun and take on everybody who was standing there.
The suspect chose to live. He submitted to arrest.
Catching him, it was a huge relief, and catching him to where there was no violence attached to the arrest was even a greater relief.
Once in custody, Guthrie began talking.
Banks around the Midwest.
He told investigators how he stayed in touch with the other primary suspect, Peter Langan.
What were their names? What are these numbers right here?
The friends used coded voicemails to contact one another. He handed over his pager and PIN number.
Now, how about this one right here?
He claimed his next meeting with Langan was to be in Indianapolis.
John, did you get that?
Guthrie's lawyer made an agreement with the FBI. For later consideration in sentencing, they could take the suspect with them to use as bait. Under the arrangement, the accompanying agents weren't allowed to question Guthrie about his crimes. Agent Welker sought another way to ply information from the bandits' leader.
I assigned 2 agents to guard him. One agent is a former Harrier pilot in the Marine Corps, and the other is our principal firearms instructor. And of course, over a 2-day period, there was a lot of discussion going on. I was well aware that Guthrie had an interest in flying, and he had a keen interest in weapons.
During the trip, the agents engaged Guthrie in long conversations about common interests. The congenial strategy worked. The assailant warmed up to his accompanying agents and began volunteering information on the robberies. Guthrie admitted that he had lied to investigators. His rendezvous was really supposed to take place in Columbus, Ohio, not Indianapolis, where the investigators had taken him.
2709 control.
He gave them the address of a safe house. He told them Langan was heavily armed. He would not come out without a fight. An FBI arrest team assembled the next morning in Columbus. Langan's van was parked next to the duplex Guthrie had described. The plan was to wait until the suspect exited his home and got into his van. Then as he pulled out, FBI cars would box him in. This would contain him and prevent a vehicular pursuit. All escape avenues were blocked off. At 9:30 a.m., Langan left the duplex carrying a canvas bag. Agents suspected this held an assault weapon. He got into his van, but failed to start the engine. The arrest team waited for the word.
Once he was observed getting into the van, the adrenaline for everyone there was flowing. Everyone knew something was going to happen.
The suspect sat motionless. Agents didn't know if he was planning something. He seemed as if he anticipated the arrest. Finally, the signal went out to move in.
Let's take him, let's take him.
In what agents thought was a suicide move, Langan had decided to put up a fight. On January 18, 1996, the suspected leader of 22 bank robberies decided to shoot it out with an FBI SWAT team. Supervisory Special Agent David Welker of the Cincinnati office led the arrest team.
Someone who's going to pull a gun on 20 or more FBI agents is one nasty dude. He's one nasty criminal.
Peter Langan was one gun against many. SWAT team bullets pummeled the van. It was over within moments, but not before 50 rounds had been fired. Langan survived and surrendered. Despite the hail of bullets, he suffered only minor injuries to the face and back. After 2 years of pursuit, the leaders of the Midwestern bank bandits were now in custody. 2 other accomplices remained at large. The van was filled with semi-automatic guns, ammunition, and grenades. Inside the canvas bag, agents found a 9mm semi-automatic pistol. It was the same make of weapon that the bank bandits used. Evidence inside the duplex confirmed the bandits were more than a gang of thieves. The house contained an armory big enough to equip a small cadre of terrorists. Agents found ski masks, FBI hats, police uniforms, and false IDs from nearly every state of the Union. Books and literature detailed the gang's creed of militant hate.
I'm Commander Pedro.
Investigators discovered a tape among the propaganda. It targeted young white males for recruitment into the Aryan Republican Army.
Today, we are preparing to take over the USA. Tomorrow, the world.
Please have a seat.
A Columbus bank teller had briefly glimpsed the face of one of the bandits 17 months earlier.
See anybody that you recognize, please.
Detectives gave her a photo lineup, hoping she could remember enough to make an ID.
This gentleman here.
Despite the intervening months, she picked out Langan from the array of similar-looking men.
Bank and robbing it. I mean,
While Langan refused to cooperate, Guthrie agreed to tell all he knew.
I don't know.
Agents debriefed him 10 hours a day for 10 straight days.
How many accomplices did you have?
Oh.
He could recall all the places, times, and dates. It took 99 pages to detail the 22 robberies.
Cotton John, okay.
But when it came to his at-large accomplices, Guthrie only knew their first names. The bank bandits had been assembled like an underground terrorist cell. Personal information on others was kept to a minimum to prevent capture. Guthrie could only offer that the man he knew only as Scott was involved in music. The man he knew as Kevin was the nephew of a police
This
officer.
is Supervisor Special Agent.
Both lived in the Philadelphia area.
Yeah.
The scanned information was forwarded to Pennsylvania. Special Agent Joe Hendrickson of the Philadelphia FBI field office was initially overwhelmed by the request.
There was no hope of finding these people with that information. I sat back and had a cup of coffee, and then I said, well, I'll go contact the Philadelphia Police Department. And there's a possibility that maybe their personnel records indicate nephews, but I was in much doubt that that type of record existed, because I know that in my outfit, I did not list nieces and nephews in my personnel file.
Philadelphia had 7,000 police officers, any one of which could be Kevin's uncle. The search began at the intelligence division of the police department. An officer knew immediately who the FBI was looking for. The division had been keeping tabs on white supremacists in the area. Intelligence officers had kept them under surveillance for over a year. Officers often spotted them meeting on a farm belonging to Mark Thomas.
Over the years, the Philadelphia Police Department had been taking down tags at various rallies and so forth. And at some point in time, they took down a tag, ran the tag, and it came out to Kevin McCarthy. And then they said, you know, we've got a lieutenant here that has that name. They contacted him, and lo and behold, they found out that Kevin McCarthy was attending Aryan Nation rallies.
Hendrickson put a surveillance squad on Kevin McCarthy. They observed him repeatedly visiting a recording studio in Philadelphia. Agents noted the license numbers of the cars outside the business. They ran the plates for all the people going in and out. One of the vehicles belonged to a man named Scott Stediford. He managed the studio and also played drums in McCarthy's band. From his amateur photo, Guthrie confirmed that this was the Scott he had worked with. Using that same photo, a witness also recognized Stediford as the getaway driver in the Des Moines robbery. An arrest warrant was sent to The studio presented too many risks for officers to invade en force. Agents could not be sure who was inside and what weapons might be hidden. They didn't want another shootout.
I'm writing it for my mom, actually, and these are the lyrics I came up with. And
Two undercover agents posed as father and daughter. The female agent asked Stediford about the cost of studio time. She claimed she wanted to record a song for her mother.
Can you grab your guitar?
As Stediford considered a quote, the undercover agents confirmed that he was alone and unarmed.
Okay, turn around. Up. You're under arrest. Turn around. Hands behind
The agents drew on him. They placed him under arrest.
Nothing to do with that.
The FBI did not have an arrest warrant for Kevin McCarthy. They feared that he would run once he heard about Stediford's capture.
What we ended up doing was we brought his uncle, the Philadelphia police officer, with us. We felt that with his blood relative, the law enforcement presence, and the total set of circumstances, that we hoped that he would somehow be convinced that the thing to do would be to cooperate.
The uncle entered the basement bedroom. He disarmed his sleeping nephew. The agent woke the young man.
Kevin? Special Agent Henderson, FBI. Son?
He began explaining that it was in McCarthy's best interest to cooperate with the FBI.
Yes, okay. We kind of know what went on today. We know who
Only
did it.
suspicion tied the young man to the crimes.
Things are going to go a lot easier on you, all right?
The agent needed a confession.
You have something you want to give us?
He showed McCarthy the 99-page admission made by Guthrie.
And when he saw this report describing every bank robbery, what they did, where they went, he realized that we had all the information. He just didn't realize that we had no evidence.
The young man was overwhelmed. He voluntarily turned over the weapon and clothing he used in the robberies. When he began to confess, his uncle stopped him and advised him to get a lawyer. With all the suspects now in custody, agents considered their investigation wrapped up. On July 3rd, 1996, Richard Guthrie pleaded guilty to 19 bank robberies. He agreed to testify against his accomplices. With his cooperation, prosecutors considered their case airtight. Nine days later, the cooperating witness hanged himself in a jail cell. The suicide devastated the government's case.
Now, that created a major problem for the prosecution because since Guthrie could no longer be cross-examined, his information couldn't be used directly against Langan.
If the other bank bandits were going to be convicted, the FBI had to find someone else who could corroborate Guthrie's confession. In 1996, the legal case against the Midwestern bank bandits was on the verge of collapse. The chief cooperating witness had killed himself. Without his testimony, the evidence against his captured co-defendants was slim. Special Agent Joe Hendrickson spearheaded the investigation in Philadelphia.
These bank robbers were very, very good, and the evidence that they left behind at every robbery was zero. They were fully masked, fully gloved. Their weapons were untraceable.
Hendrickson helped convince Kevin McCarthy to plead guilty and turn state's witness. But prosecutors needed more than one cooperating felon to convict the others. Investigators focused on the man who had steered suspects into the Aryan Republican Army. Mark Thomas had turned Scott Stediford and Kevin McCarthy into outlaws. Thomas edited a newsletter and webpage for white supremacists. His literature and videos had swayed many young men into racist and anti-government organizations.
And we felt that even though he was not personally involved in these crimes, that he had caused these crimes to come about, and therefore he was responsible. And based on conspiracy laws, we felt that it was quite possible to go after him for conspiring to commit bank robbery.
The FBI made weekly contact with Thomas at his Pennsylvania farm. They wanted to know about his activities, but more importantly, they wanted to keep pressure on him.
15 years. You live here alone? No, I've had about enough of you guys coming over here messing with me.
They made it clear that they suspected him and weren't going away.
Cool.
Kevin McCarthy told investigators that he and Scott Stediford had stayed at Thomas's home.
It's going to change your life. Yeah.
He acted like a father figure to them and warned them of the coming race war. He brought the young men to live in Elohim City, a white separatist compound in Oklahoma. During the summer of 1994, Thomas invited them to join the Aryan Republican Army. In mid-October, Scott Stediford agreed. He participated in his first bank robbery 2 weeks later. On November 13th, Thomas drove Kevin McCarthy to Arkansas for an introduction to Langan and Guthrie. The teenager heard them boast of successfully robbing banks throughout the Midwest. The 17-year-old joined up.
We found a better way to do it.
Agents also learned from McCarthy that Thomas took $100 in stolen money for the start of an Aryan war chest. Over the months of contact, agents caught Thomas in several lies about his activities.
This is my farm, and I don't need you on my farm, you know? So
They took what they had to U.S. prosecutors.
okay, I'm doing what he says.
The United States Attorney's Office decided that based on the cooperating witnesses' testimony, we were going to arrest him. Even though it was a very slim case, it was a close call, as the United States Attorney's Office would say, but we're going to put out an arrest warrant for him.
Thomas heard that the FBI was going to pick him up on a charge of conspiracy. He agreed to surrender after calling the media to witness the event. He told the press their presence prevented his assassination. Thomas pleaded not guilty at his arraignment hearing on February 4th, 1997.
No comment.
He asked to meet with the FBI the next day. That's where Mark Thomas caved. He signed a 7-page plea agreement that corroborated Kevin McCarthy's confession. The government's case was now solid.
This was the biggest surprise of anyone's involved in the case. The idea that the head of the movement, after one day in prison, would decide to completely cooperate was just unfathomable. But apparently our pressure over the 6 months of continually talking to him, and then the one night in prison, was enough for him to decide that he had been completely wrong in his ideals and that he wanted to, as he said, get right with God.
Mark Thomas was sentenced to 9.5 years in prison. Peter Langan was convicted on bank robbery and gun charges. He received life without parole. Kevin McCarthy got 5 years. His testimony helped convict Scott Stediford on 2 counts of armed bank robbery. The court sentenced Stediford to 29.5 years. In America, extremist groups enjoy the freedom to maintain their beliefs. They are constitutionally protected until they cross the legal line. If they engage in outlaw activities, they will find the FBI on a mission to stop them. Southern Ohio's rural counties are perfect for outdoor recreation. But the calm of this quiet community was shattered in 1989 when a sniper gunned down an outdoorsman without reason. It was only the first in a string of random, terrifying murders. Hiding in the distance, behind a high-powered rifle, a madman was hunting humans along Ohio's county roads.
Starting in the spring of 1989, a madman prowled the woods and fields of rural Ohio. He was a hunter. A high-powered rifle was his weapon of choice. Joggers and fishermen were his quarry. The hunter roamed far, struck at random, and left no clues. He was as elusive as he was lethal. Investigators knew he had to be stopped, but no one knew how. I'm Jim Kallstrom, former director of the FBI's New York office. Most murderers have a connection to their victims and a motive for their crime, but not a serial killer. His victims are randomly chosen to fulfill an uncontrollable need to kill. Often he leads an ordinary life, his family and friends unaware of his homicidal passions. But serial killers establish profiles, as distinct as fingerprints, and when a match is made, it is only a matter of time before they are caught.
The rural counties of southern Ohio are hilly, rocky, and wide open. A quiet place for coal miners, factory workers, and farmers. The kind of place where people leave doors unlocked and where violent crime is almost unheard of. On April 1st, 1989, 35-year-old Donald Welling did what he frequently did on Saturdays. He went jogging along the back roads of Tuscarawas County. His quiet morning run ended with a single shot. The rifle bullet ripped through Welling's heart, killing him instantly. Local authorities could find no motive and not a shred of evidence. The rifle was never found. November 10th, 1990, another Saturday morning, 19 months later. 21-year-old Jamie Paxton of Bannock, Ohio, rose early to go bow hunting. Leaving his crossbow in the car, he took a walk through the tall grass off State Route 9. Paxton was alone and unarmed. He didn't notice the red pickup truck that stopped a short distance away. The gunman was quiet and careful. Jamie Paxton was shot 3 times by a high-powered rifle. There were no witnesses. The killing horrified a quiet community that considered murder to be a problem for big cities. Hunting accidents are not uncommon in southern Ohio, but Belmont County Sheriff Tom McCourt knew right away that this wasn't a hunting accident.
When we saw more than one wound, we knew that it could not be an accident. That an accidental death hunting accident is called a one-shot. Plus, we saw it was a bullet wound instead of something from an arrow, and gun season was not in yet.
Sheriff Tom McCourt's jurisdiction is large geographically, but the community is closely knit. There, people work hard, and everyone seems to know everyone. McCourt even knew Jamie Paxton. What he didn't know was who killed him. The gunman had left no clues.
We checked the area for spent, empty cartridge cases, for tire tracks, for anything in that area of where we thought the shot came from. We also checked the area around the body looking for the spent projectiles that had passed through the body. We even took metal detectors in looking for the projectiles. At that time, we were unable to find anything. We're gonna run over there by the marina and see.
After interviewing Jamie Paxton's friends, family, and acquaintances, they were unable to find anyone with a motive to kill him.
Everyone in the area knew Jamie Paxton. No one that we knew of or was able, even to this day, have ever found anyone who disliked a young man.
Sheriff McCourt had an apparently random killing of a popular young man with no history of trouble. A seemingly unsolvable murder with no physical evidence and no witnesses. Not even a plausible theory about what happened.
I think that's about it.
After her son's death, Jean Paxton's grief impelled her to action. She began composing letters to a local paper, the Martins Ferry Times Leader, designed to draw out the killer.
There was just every time I would sit down to write a letter, I would say a prayer. And I would say, please God, just give me the words to get to the person that killed my son.
The letters were at once stern and passionate. To the murderer of my son Jamie, she wrote, would it be easier for you if I wrote words of hate? I can't because I don't feel hate. I feel deep sorrow at losing my son. You took a light from my life last November and left me with many days of darkness. Have you thought of your own death? It'll happen. Unless you confess your sin and ask for God's forgiveness, you will face the fire and fury of hell at your own death. If the killer were reading Jean Paxton's letters, he seemed unaffected by them. On November 28, 1990, just 18 days after Paxton's murder, 30-year-old Kevin Loring was on a hunting trip in Muskingum County, Ohio, some 40 miles from where Jamie Paxton was killed. While his friends finished eating lunch, Kevin decided to get a head start. Walking across a field in search of game, Loring himself became prey, unknowingly moving into the sights of the gunman. Loring was killed by a single gunshot wound to the head. The killer had taken care to commit his murders in different counties to slow an investigation that would have to take place over hundreds of rural miles. The result? Investigators in Muskingum County were unaware of the other sniper victims in nearby counties. They decided that Loring's death was probably a hunting accident. Jean Paxton never gave up. She kept writing throughout 1991, determined to draw out Jamie's killer.
And I always felt if I could get my letters into the hands of the person that killed my son, I felt that I could get a response from them.
She turned out to be right. I am the murderer of Jamie Paxton, the typewritten letter read. Jamie Paxton was a complete stranger to me. I never saw him before in my life, and he never said a word to me that Saturday. Paxton was killed because of an irresistible compulsion that has taken over my life. I knew when I left my house that day that someone would die by my hand. I just didn't know who or where. I'm an average-looking person with a family, a job, and home, just like yourself. Something in my head causes me to turn into a merciless killer with no conscience. The letter arrived at the Martins Ferry Times-Leader a few days before the one-year anniversary of Jamie's death. The letter described the Paxton murder in chilling detail. I was very drunk, and a voice in my head said, "Do it." I stopped my car behind Jamie's and got out. Jamie started walking very slowly down the hill toward the road. I raised my rifle to my shoulder and lined him up in the sights. I took at least 5 seconds to take careful aim. My first shot was off a little bit and hit him in the right chest. He groaned and went down. I wanted to make sure he was finished, so I fired a second shot aimed halfway between his hip and shoulder while he was prone on the ground. I jerked the shot and hit him in the knee. He never moved again. 5 minutes after I shot Paxton, I was drinking a beer and had blacked out all thoughts of what I had just done out of my mind. I thought no more of shooting Paxton than shooting a bottle at the dump. I know you hate my guts, and rightfully so. I think about Jamie every hour of the day, as I'm sure you do. For Sheriff McCourt, the letter was a beginning, evidence that might lead to a murderer. But he needed more. The typewriter used to write the letter, a gun. While investigators searched, the killer continued his own hunting. Saturday, March 14th, 1992. Claude Hawkins got off his midnight shift at the Pittsburgh Plate and Glass Company about sunup. It was a good time to fish, and Hawkins went straight to a favorite spot on the river below Wills Creek Dam. Hawkins had a wife and 4 children. Another outdoorsman had been killed while alone, but this one took place on federal property. The FBI stepped in. The FBI joined the hunt for the roadside sniper who just killed his latest victim on federal property. Investigators from the 3 counties involved, along with the FBI and the Ohio Division of Wildlife, formed a task force. It didn't take long to realize how few clues they had. In each case, the killer had no contact with the victim, no rifling of pockets, no robbery. Shell casings had been carefully removed, and the victim's cars were untouched. Special Agent Harry Trombitis was stationed at the FBI's Columbus, Ohio field office.
What we did know is that Mr. Hawkins died from a gunshot, and usually you would find some type of a shell casing in the area. And I remember looking very hard, metal detectors and hands and knees for any shell casings in that, and none were ever found. And so that was something that, you know, if in fact we had somebody who was evidence conscious enough to pick up the shell casing after they shot and killed somebody, we were dealing with a different brand of person here.
The multi-jurisdictional task force concluded that the death of Kevin Loring, first ruled accidental, was actually a homicide.
We got a problem.
Okay, what I got is,
Reviewing the 4 murders, the investigative team saw plenty in common. Outdoorsmen, hunters, fishermen, or joggers, alone in a rural setting, all shot with a high-powered rifle. All but one of the murders occurred on a weekend, and the killer was careful enough to leave no evidence.
He didn't have any interest in his victims.
It was more clear than ever that a single individual was responsible. The task force was on the trail of a serial killer. As they began to mobilize, the killer struck again.
I know we can capture this person. I know we can.
10 days after the task force meeting, on April 5, 1992, 44-year-old steelworker Gary Brett had left his home in neighboring West Virginia to go pond fishing in Noble County. Bradley's wife and 3 children would never see him alive again. The task force had another murder. The road sniper had to be stopped. The task force wanted to learn more about the personality of the sniper. They asked the FBI to draw up a psychological profile of the serial killer. Such an outline would be invaluable in tracking him down.
Something there we can
Major Dane Shryock of the Coshocton County Sheriff's Office headed the task force.
Right after we had initially made an assessment that maybe these things might be linked, the Columbus FBI office set up a meeting to have the Behavioral Science Unit come to Columbus, Ohio, and actually sit down and talk with the investigators of these 5 counties of the homicides.
The FBI's Behavioral Science Unit in Quantico, Virginia, can accurately sketch personality profiles of individuals from sparse clues. Larry Ankrum is a member of the Behavioral Science Unit assigned to the road sniper case. He studied all the available evidence, the investigative reports of the 5 murders, and especially the letter that the killer had written to Gene Paxton.
Then I came back to Quantico and reviewed these cases more in detail, and I came out with a formal profile. We were probably looking for a white male. We were looking for someone that was intelligent, someone who was an outdoorsman himself, someone that wouldn't look out of place in the woods, someone that was probably responding to some significant event in his life that was going wrong at that particular time. One of the things that was apparent that there was a sniper type mentality here that we were dealing with, someone that didn't want confrontation, someone that was doing things from afar, and this is something that we see many times with our arsonists. We ought to be looking at some different types of activities that he might be involved in, such as nuisance types of offenses, shooting out windows, shooting out tires of cars, cruelty to animals, arson fires.
Ankrum believed that the violence was triggered by stress and fueled by alcohol. The task force now had a psychological sketch of the roadside sniper. And they had his letter. FBI forensic scientists studied the letter intensely. They found distinguishing features in the typeface. If they could find the typewriter it was written on, it would be easy to link the confessional letter to the owner, and thus link the murder to the murderer. They had to hurry. The sniper was still out there. On July 21st, 1992, two hunters in a state park in Muskegon County came face to face with the killer. As they moved through the brush, one of them noticed something terrifying. A nearby figure with a gun pointed right at them. They called out to him, and the man scurried away to a red pickup truck. It happened too quickly for the hunters to get a good look at the man or the vehicle's tag numbers. Bewildered, they called local police, who alerted the task force. Throughout 1992, desperate to catch a man still ready to kill, the task force investigated and cleared more than 100 suspects. By August 1992, after 3 years, the investigation had hit a dead end. The task force was badly in need of information and decided to go public.
It is in the opinion of this multi-agency task force that these homicides...
They held a press conference and issued a press release detailing the FBI profile of the man they wanted and asking anyone with information to come forward.
The FBI made a press release, and it was done at one time to mass, and it got everybody, 6 o'clock news, I mean, everybody was showing this case. And the phone started ringing instantly.
Wilson.
One of those calls, received at task force headquarters on August 26, 1992, sparked a lead. The man on the phone was named Richard Fry. He said he thought the task force should know about a high school friend of his named Thomas Dillon.
D-I-L-L-O-N.
Investigators had a name and someone willing to talk. A task force member arranged to meet Richard Fry at a rest stop on Route 77.
Tom Dillon. I went to high school with him. We grew up together.
There, Fry talked about his old friend, Tom Dillon.
He was always a little strange.
They used to drive around rural Ohio, shooting at road signs and small animals. But Fry eventually found Dillon too eccentric and violent for his taste. Obsessed with serial killers like Ted Bundy, Dillon had taken to killing family pets and cattle and setting random fires. Fry got married and for most of the 1980s forgot about his strange friend. But in 1989, Fry ran into Thomas Dillon at a gun show in Cleveland.
Tom? Thomas.
Dillon invited him to ride along with him again, just like in the old days. Old friendships die hard, and Richard Fry again found himself driving the back roads of rural Ohio, drinking beer and shooting road signs. But Dillon had deteriorated, Fry discovered. Dillon asked whether Fry thought Dillon had ever killed anyone.
We've known each other for a long time.
20-some years, I guess.
Yeah. Do you think I could ever kill anybody?
Tom, you know, like you said, we go way back. I mean...
He discussed how to get away with random killings, including the tactic of killing in different counties to thwart investigators.
Kill them in separate counties, you know. They never connected. And being at random, they'd have no clues whatsoever.
not average, your average guy.
Fry said that when he read the press release, he immediately thought of Tom Dillon.
Tell me what kind of vehicle he drives.
He gave a description of Dillon, including the vehicle he drove, a red pickup truck, just like the one spotted by the hunters.
Yes, as a matter of fact, it is.
Lieutenant Walt Wilson of the Tuscarawas County Sheriff's Office was a task force member. His job was to follow up on leads and tips, which were coming much more frequently as press coverage of the case increased. He decided Tom Dillon fit the FBI profile and needed to be investigated.
I began to follow up on the information that Mr. Fry had given us. I went to Tom Dillon's workplace in the city of Canton.
Dillon had been employed for a dozen years as a draftsman at the Canton, Ohio Water Works. Wilson obtained Thomas Dillon's work schedule to compare Dillon's days off with the dates and times of the murders. The purpose was to eliminate Dillon as a suspect, but he couldn't. He found that Dillon didn't work weekends when most of the incidents occurred, but that didn't prove much. However, 2 weekdays Dillon took off from work caught Wilson's attention. July 21st, 1992, the day the hunters saw a man point a rifle at them, and November 28th, 1990, the day Kevin Loring was killed.
Please.
Dillon could be the one. As the other members of the task force followed up on hundreds of leads, Detective Wilson began surveillance on Thomas Dillon. Maybe Dillon would return to a crime scene or lead investigators to more clues. The surveillance began in October 1992. Detective Wilson followed Tom Dillon on his weekend excursions, driving the back roads of southern Ohio.
Typically, a day would start around 7 in the morning on Tom's days off, the weekends usually, and he would leave his home, and sometimes he would stop at a convenience store and buy some beer, and then he would go south of his home into other counties, just driving all the back remote roadways.
On October 10th, 1992, while tailing Dillon, Wilson briefly lost track of the suspect's vehicle. As Wilson crept around a corner, he came face to face with Thomas Dillon. His cover possibly blown, his case in jeopardy, Wilson had to think fast.
I waved at him and he waved at me, and we kept on going. He stopped at the end of the drive to see if I was going to stay there or not.
Wilson couldn't risk being identified. He let Dillon drive away.
My big concern was, I hope he doesn't stop and ask me what I'm doing on that property, because I had all of my gear laying in the car with me, and I didn't want him to see my radios and my gear that I had with me.
A few days later, Larry Oler of Barnhill, Ohio, was hunting about 150 yards off a road in Tuscarawas County. He heard a car stop. Through the trees, he saw a stocky white male. The man lifted a rifle. Oler was unhurt and watched in terror as the truck sped away. Although Oler's description of his assailant resembled Dillon, he was unable to make a positive identification. The task force realized that Thomas Dillon was their most likely suspect. Surveillance of him would have to be beefed up. Throughout October and November of 1992, the FBI coordinated a massive air and ground surveillance. Dillon was observed shooting road signs and busting car windows with rocks. Exactly the sort of petty vandalism outlined in the FBI profile. But if they arrested Dillon for vandalism, they might never gather enough evidence to arrest him for the murders. It is difficult to tail someone on an empty rural road in broad daylight. The stakes were high. If Dillon tried another shooting and the FBI weren't in the right spot, they could have another murder. If they crowded Dillon too much, they might be found out, and Dillon would slip into hiding. The ground surveillance had to be well off of Dillon. Agent Trumbitis and Captain Shryock relied on the air surveillance as their eyes and ears. They would move in if something happened. One day, the surveillance team faced its worst fear. Trumbitis and Shryock were far behind Dillon when the air surveillance called out an alert. Up ahead of Dillon, on the road, was the classic profile of a road sniper victim. A jogger, female this time, alone, in a rural setting. If Thomas Dillon were indeed the gunman, this jogger may be irresistible bait. Trumbitis and Shryock got nervous. Hoping for the best, they sped forward. Dillon continued too, right toward the jogger. Driving at top speed, Trumbitis and Shryock frantically called to the agents in the plane. Where is he? Is he stopping? The airplane reported back. Dillon is approaching her. There is no one nearby. The agent's car hurtled forward. A call from the air. Dillon is pulling up alongside the jogger. The agents held their breath. He passed her without incident. The feeling of relief lasted only moments. The airplane radioed that Dillon had taken a right turn onto a smaller road. The aerial unit stayed on him, instructing Trumbitis and Shryock where to turn. Then a second right turn. Could he be circling back? They called to the airplane, is the jogger still there? Dillon continued to make right turns until he was back on the road the jogger had been on. His U-turn justified the agent's fear. He was going back for her. Where is the jogger? Trumbitis yelled into his radio. Cannot see the jogger, came the reply. But the agents knew she had to be somewhere ahead of Dillon. If he came upon her again, they were sure he would kill her. The air unit called in that Dillon had stopped his truck and had gotten out. He had something shiny in his hands. Would he kill her right under their noses? The jogger couldn't be seen from the air, but that didn't mean she wasn't there. The agents in the car heard shots and feared that Dillon had struck again while under their surveillance. But the airplane radioed that Dillon was shooting a stop sign. The jogger had turned off the road. She was safe, unaware of her close encounter with Thomas Dillon.
I think so.
The cat and mouse game with Thomas Dillon began to wear on the task force members.
I figure if we have 5 ground
A lot of pressure. I mean, you're wondering whether this guy today is going to go out and kill somebody and you aren't going to be able to stop it. And you know that he's probably the one that is responsible for killing other people. You're working 14, 16 hours a day. You're living out of a car. You're drinking coffee like policemen, you know, and you aren't eating right. And the stress is tremendous.
But the net continued to tighten around the suspect. The murderer, in his letter to the newspaper, had admitted being bothered by the Paxton murder and visiting his grave. Investigators returned to video footage of Jamie Paxton's grave recorded November 10th, 1991, the first anniversary of Jamie's murder. Many people paid their respects that day, but curiosity rather than respect was the agenda of one visitor photographed, Thomas Dillon. Investigators immediately recognized the man they had been tailing. Surely he was the sniper, but to earn a conviction they needed direct, incriminating evidence. After the second anniversary of Jamie Paxton's death in 1992, surveillance observed Dillon entering the Times-Leader building. He bought a copy of the previous day's paper, full of the details of the Paxton Memorial Service. The FBI had good circumstantial evidence on Thomas Dillon, but they still lacked physical evidence, a bullet, a gun, or a typewriter, to link him with just one of the victims. Hunting season was fast approaching. Dillon was still out roaming the rural roads, drunk, armed, deadly. The communities of southern Ohio had been terrorized for 3 years. The people feared going outside, but tried to live normal lives. Dillon had to be taken off the streets. The task force knew Dillon had been in trouble in the past for illegally owning a silencer and was forbidden to possess firearms, a stipulation he clearly violated during his vandalism sprees. The task force had little choice. Before he could kill again, they would arrest Thomas Dillon. But the plan wasn't just to arrest him on a weapons violation, but to convince him he was caught red-handed and get him to confess to murder. Lacking ballistic evidence and holding only a relatively minor weapons charge on Dillon, the FBI badly needed to elicit a confession. Trumbitis had a plan.
Since we knew what his routine was through the surveillances and that, where he left his residence and he would go to this dairy mart every day before he left and went on his 300-400 mile drives, we would try to make the approach at the dairy mart. And what we had was an office building right across from the dairy mart where we occupied. We took over the basement of that building. Detective Wilson and I did was we went down into the basement where we were going to conduct the interview, and we put up along the walls of the whole room maps of the areas that he drove in, crime scene photographs, newspaper articles. We wanted to make that setting just irresistible to him.
Then we're just going to, piece by piece, start laying this out in front of him and see what kind of reaction we get from him.
It would be overwhelming, and you know, it would put him in the best frame of mind for us to be able to sit down and interview him and get a confession.
Mr. Dillon.
On November 27, 1992, the plan went into effect. Their entire case so far rested on getting a confession.
The idea was for when he came out of the dairy mart, we were going to approach him, identify ourselves, and basically request that he follow us voluntarily over to this room where we wanted to share some information with him and show him some things that we knew that would interest him.
If Dillon refused, Trumbitis would raise his right hand to signal ATF agents who are responsible for making arrests in weapons cases to cuff Dillon.
And I can just remember his reaction. I mean, his jaw just for about 5 seconds, and then he composed himself and he said, "I want to talk to my attorney first."
That was the cue. Trumbitis gave the signal and the ATF agents stepped in and arrested Thomas Dillon. Dillon didn't realize it, but it was a bitter defeat for the FBI. Trumbitis thought he'd blown it, despite all the evidence he'd gathered. Despite his certainty that they had the road sniper, he feared that he would see a 5-time murderer quickly released on a minor weapons charge. At the very time of Dillon's arrest, other task force members were executing a search warrant on Dillon's house. Finally, the FBI felt they would come away with the physical evidence desperately needed to link him, once and for all, to the murders. But they didn't. To their surprise, the search turned up nothing more incriminating than some area maps marked with arson and vandalism sites. Dillon was refusing to talk. They were holding him, but there was nothing they could do with him.
It was pretty much over when he said he wanted to talk to his attorney. So we went back to the restaurant and we were going to have a cup of coffee, and all of a sudden we got the word that he wanted to talk to us. And so Walt and I jumped into our car and we made a beeline to Stark County Jail.
Trombitis and Wilson confronted Dillon with one piece of evidence after another. Photographs, videotapes, newspaper clippings showing his link to the murders.
I would pull out one piece at a time and show him, and just as we had suspected, he just was keenly interested in the information that we had, the surveillance pictures, the crime scene photos, you know, just the animal, you know, the shots of the animals that we had along the roadways and that. You could just see that he was just fascinated by that.
Fascinated but not talkative, Dillon said it would serve no purpose to admit anything now. Another dead end for the FBI. Dillon's attorney is arguing that he should be spared jail time on the weapons charge. Now, unless something turned up on him very quickly, Thomas Dillon would have to be released.
Thank the various representatives of the media for showing up today.
The task force was now fighting the clock. Desperate for physical evidence, they held another press conference, appealing to the public for any information about guns they may have bought or sold with Thomas Dillon.
Have had any contact with Mr. Dillon?
Meanwhile, task force member Jerry Wade of the Ohio Division of Wildlife was following up on a tip. A witness steered Wade to a spot where he had seen Thomas Dillon firing his rifle a couple of years back. Wade hoped that would lead him to some ballistic evidence to link Dillon to one of the killings.
This individual that brought it to our attention that he'd seen Thomas Lee Dillon shoot this deer with a rifle thought the rifle might be one of them that was used. And if we could locate some physical evidence, the shell casings per se, and if we could get those and match them to the murder weapon, we could put that rifle in Thomas Lee Dillon's hand prior to the murders, which would really give us a lot stronger case as far as him possessing the rifle prior to the murders.
The chances of finding the small shells in such a wide area were slim, and it had been 2 years since the rifle had been fired there. Determined, Wade patiently combed inch by inch through a grassy field where the anonymous witness said he saw Dillon shoot the deer. Beginning at the tree described by the witness, Wade searched the area in a circular pattern by hand and with a metal detector, carefully marking off the territory. Miraculously, Wade hit the jackpot. He found 2 rifle shell casings, later identified as coming from the same gun that killed Gary Bradley and Claude Hawkins. Finally, a physical link to the murders.
I felt like celebrating. It was just unbelievable that I found them, because after the time, the length of time that had been since the shooting and the incident, and the individual wasn't sure the location of the tree exactly. The scene had changed since he had been there. They had removed a fence row and pushed out the area. So I felt very, very much fortunate to find him, and I felt like a celebration at the time. It was just like, you know, it was a gift handed to you.
Meanwhile, the publicity from the press conference asking the public for help was about to bear fruit. On December 4th, Captain Shryock was manning the phones at Task Force headquarters. A man named Al Cope was on the phone.
Can you give me that?
He said he bought a weapon from someone who may have been Thomas Dillon at a gun show the previous spring.
I'll tell you what, if you give me about 15 minutes, sir, I'll be right there.
The date? April 5th, the same day Gary Bradley was murdered. The rifle was sent to the FBI laboratory in Washington for ballistics testing. Special Agent Paul Schrecker is a ballistics expert for the FBI.
As the bullet passes down the barrel of the weapon, that bullet, by coming in direct contact with the interior of the barrel of the weapon, picks up the microscopic imperfections, the microscopic features of that barrel. So that bullet is marked with the fingerprint of that barrel.
Fragments of bullets taken from the bodies of victims Claude Hawkins and Gary Bradley were examined at FBI labs.
A bullet fragment may still be of value for comparison. Even though a bullet may fragment, may break up as a result of striking a victim, and maybe only fragments are ever recovered, those fragments are still marked. They still bear the impressions of the inside of the barrel of the weapon. And those fragments can still be used to make a positive association or an identification. When the weapon was submitted to our laboratory, the weapon was test-fired, and the test-fired bullets from this weapon were then compared to the bullet fragments taken from the victims.
Al Cope's gun was test-fired, and the bullets examined for characteristics they may have in common with the bullet fragments taken from Gary Bradley and Claude Hawkins. The conclusion? Al Cope's gun, sold to him by Thomas Dillon, matched the gun used to kill both Gary Bradley and Claude Hawkins. The FBI finally had the goods on Thomas Dillon.
Close the door, please.
Agent Trombitis visited Dillon in jail and confronted him with the evidence. He and his truck fit the descriptions of the few witnesses. He had been off work when each murder had occurred. He had a history of random violence and gunplay. And the FBI could prove in court that a gun he once owned killed at least 2 of the victims.
What kind of proof?
What kind of proof? All the proof we need.
But Trombitis knew Dillon was guilty of all 5 murders, and he wanted closure for the victims' families. He offered Dillon a deal. As leverage, Trombitis reminded Dillon that he faced Ohio's electric chair. Dillon got nervous, and he began to negotiate.
And what's your assessment of the situation?
I still can't believe you got that hard evidence.
Well, we have evidence.
Thomas Dillon met with the prosecutors in June of 1993. He agreed to admit to 5 killings if the death penalty were dropped as a possible sentence.
Terms, 1 each for each of the acts committed.
On July 9th, Dillon confessed to prosecutors in order to save his life. On July 12, 1993, a smirking Thomas Dillon walked into the Noble County Courthouse to make his plea.
Mr. Dillon, at this time, how do you plead to count 1 in the indictment in case number 93 CR4 involving the death of the aggravated murder charge involving the death of Gary Bradley? How do you plead? Guilty.
With the families of the victims watching, Dillon confessed to murdering Donald Welling, Kevin Loring, Claude Hawkins, Gary Bradley, and Jamie Paxton. He was still smirking and unrepentant as he left court.
At this time of the indictment in case number 93 CR4. Guilty.
Hello?
Jolene. Hi.
Tom.
This is Thomas. Yeah.
Dillon's incredibly cavalier attitude was detailed by a local reporter whom Dillon repeatedly called from prison,
Can't get enough of me.
marveling at his own violence, reveling in his celebrity, and laughing off the murders.
Let's talk about the other guys. I mean, they
Except
were
one.
really good shit.
He would not discuss
I
the
wanna talk
murder
about
of Jamie Paxton.
No, forget it, all right? Just forget it.
Jean Paxton, Jamie's mother, was in court the day Dillon pleaded guilty.
I just want to talk to him about Jamie, the kind of person Jamie was. Jamie was everything Thomas Dillon could never be. Dillon is a coward. He hid behind a gun, and Jamie was not that way. Little did I know that on the evening news he was watching that, and it made him very angry that I had called him a pathetic coward.
We talked to him about remorse and how did you feel after these homicides, and the only one that he said that it really bothered him about was Jamie Paxton. He said, "I didn't realize the kid was so young."
Jean Paxton had looked forward to confronting Dillon in court, but his guilty plea cost her that opportunity. She asked Sheriff McCourt to arrange a conversation.
Hi.
McCourt agreed. That evening, Jean Paxton's phone rang. She found herself speaking with the murderer of her son.
When I picked up the phone that evening, it was just like somebody calling up to sell me something. He said, "Mrs. Paxton, this is Tom Dillon." It was just almost more than I could comprehend. The tone of his voice, the way he came across. Still the arrogance was there.
You really hurt my feelings this afternoon when...
Dillon told Jean Paxton that when she called him a coward, she had hurt his feelings.
I really don't think he expected to get what he got from me. I think that Thomas Dillon could have handled the crying, the screaming, the saying of calling names, the cursing. I think he could handle that, but I did not lower myself to that level. I talked to him as a mother, and I really feel that through this whole thing, that is what got to Thomas Dillon.
I understand.
After 3 years, Jean Paxton felt vindicated.
I felt really good. I walked out on my front porch, and I just felt like for the first time in 3 years that I was free. I was free of Thomas Dillon. I felt that I had defeated him by words, and I did it all for Jamie.
Thomas Dillon made it clear he did not want to go to Lucasville Prison, the toughest in Ohio. So Jean Paxton saw to it, with a petition drive, that was exactly where Dillon was sent. In August 1993, Jean Paxton won a $25 million wrongful death judgment against any future money Dillon might make. Dillon's wife had been trying to sell his story to Hollywood. Paxton and State Senator Bob Nye passed the Paxton Bill, barring killers or their relatives from profiting from the crime. Thomas Dillon remains in Lucasville Prison. He is eligible for parole in 165 years. It's Friday night in October of 1993. And in Northern California, 3 junior high school girls are having a slumber party. Halloween is around the corner, and the girls have been trying on different costumes in preparation for the upcoming holiday. Within seconds, their lives will change forever. October 1st, Polly Klaas and Jillian Pelham were waiting for another friend outside of Polly's house in Petaluma, California. It was around 8:30 when Kate McLean and her mother showed up. The 3 girls were ready for fun. It was Friday night. There was ice cream in the fridge, and they were going to stay up all night long. This was going to be a party. No one had any idea of the danger that lurked so close by. The girls kept to Polly's bedroom, but they couldn't suppress the noise as easily. At about 9:45, Polly's mother, Eve Nickel, looked in on the girls and asked them to keep it down. She was suffering a migraine headache and thought she'd turn in early. Eve's bedroom was right across the hall from the girls, and although she had chided them about the noise, she was pretty sure it would only take a few minutes for the 12-year-olds to get noisy again. Before going to bed, Eve took her prescription pills to block out all distractions and get her fast to sleep. The party continued on for almost an hour before the nightmare began. It was around 10:30 when the intruder entered the room. At first, Kate and Jillian thought it was a joke. Then they saw the knife. He told them if they screamed, he'd slit their throats. Immediately, he tied them up and started asking questions. He wanted to know which girl lived there and who else was in the house. Polly spoke up. The girls were terrified and crying. And he assured them that he wasn't going to hurt anyone, that he was only there for money. But when Polly told him where some cash was hidden in a jewelry box, he made no attempt to find it. He gagged the girls and took the cases off some pillows to use as hoods. He made Polly get up and told the others to count to 1,000. By the time they were done, he said she'd be back. Then he took Polly, Klaas, and disappeared into the night. Petaluma police officers were called to the scene after the girls managed to free themselves and wake Polly's mother. They responded in minutes. Investigators entered Polly's room and began to look around. The bedroom was in disarray and told of the events that had happened just minutes before. On the floor were binding materials, cut strips of cloth. The cords from the Nintendo game had been cut, and a strap that was clipped from a purse lay on the floor. Pillowcases were strewn about.
I know.
What Petaluma Police Detective Mike Meese saw wasn't encouraging.
I remember standing at the doorway to Polly's room and looking at these few bags of evidence that we had been able to collect and thinking that that was just such a pitiful amount. And I looked down at the rug and I talked to my partner, Larry Pelton, and said, "Let's take the rug." And he said, "Why?" And I said, "I don't know why, but let's just take the rug. We just don't have enough evidence."
FBI.
Police were in desperate need of assistance. Fortunately, help was on the way. After being contacted by the Klaas family, the Federal Bureau of Investigation offered its expertise.
How about, have y'all talked to the mother?
Yes.
Shortly after midnight, the FBI appeared at the house of Polly Klaas. Typically, the Bureau handles kidnappings, and with 800 a year to investigate, they have plenty of experience. Because he was familiar with the community and experienced in kidnapping cases, Special Agent Ed Fryer became the lead investigator. But he knew something about this case was different.
It had all the earmarks of a stranger abduction case because the statements from the two girls were consistent. Stranger abduction cases are the hardest cases to solve, in my experience, because, again, there's no connection between the perpetrator of the crime and your victim, or the victim's family, or somebody even associated to the victim. It's a random act.
Surprisingly, a vast majority of kidnappings involved disgruntled family members. And though Polly's parents were separated, her father, Mark Klaas, was immediately cleared of any responsibility. Abductions involving total strangers are exceedingly rare and leave little for investigators to go on. In this case, however, there were witnesses.
Was his hair long or short?
A police sketch artist was called in from the San Rafael Police Department. For 2 hours, Jillian and Kate tried to recall the face of the man who had barged into the bedroom. The girls were still terribly upset, but they managed to give the artist a pretty good description. Authorities now had their first idea of what the stranger looked like.
His nose and mouth.
After 4 a.m., the girls were taken to the police station, and the FBI called in one of its special forces, the Evidence Response Team. Tony Maxwell leads the crew.
In looking at cases across the United States, we have found that when somebody is kidnapped, especially a young child, that they will generally be harmed within the first 24 hours, and probably within the first couple of days could even be killed. So time is of the essence. In that kind of work, the investigator needs to move quickly.
The Evidence Response Team is designed to provide forensic resources at a major crime scene. Their sole responsibility is to collect evidence, and they use the most sophisticated collecting equipment available to do it. An electrostatic dust print machine collects tiny hairs and fibers off the floor when a positive charge is passed over a sheet of mylar. Any loose debris clings to the mylar and is sent to a lab for careful inspection. Although the police department had already dusted for fingerprints, they had come up with nothing particularly promising. But they didn't have access to the same equipment as the FBI. The alternate light source was a new method that employed a unique fluorescent powder, which when combined with a distinct ultraviolet light and amber-colored goggles, could illuminate many things that otherwise would remain hidden. The team found 4 dozen fingerprints the police were unable to see using conventional equipment. But even those were of no use. They were attributed to family and friends. After hours of meticulous searching, something finally turned up.
Hey, we're still working on it. Do you have anything? Yeah, I have some ridge detail in the bedpost here. It looks like it's pretty good ridge detail.
A palm print that at the outset seemed like the first real piece of forensic evidence left behind at the scene.
That palm print was found on the bed, on a crossbar of a bed, where he apparently put his hand up for just a second to lean on it, perhaps to support himself as he was grabbing something. And with the alternate light source and the fluorescent fingerprint work that we did, we were able to see it, collect it, and then gather that for the laboratory.
At that time, the FBI's fingerprint database, AFIS, didn't contain palm prints, only fingerprints. But even a palm print won't catch a suspect. It will only identify one once he's captured. FBI Special Agent Mark Mershon explains.
People often think that when you have a fingerprint or a palm print that you quickly establish the identity of a criminal. The truth of the matter is, in most instances, you have to identify a suspect, have fingerprints for that suspect in order to compare with a latent fingerprint.
The hunt for the suspect prompted authorities to cover Polly's neighborhood inch by inch. By dawn, more than 100 agents and officers had begun a 24-hour search for Polly and her abductor. Helicopters and bloodhounds had been called out, and an all-points bulletin was issued by local authorities and the FBI. Systematically, the authorities searched every house in the neighborhood. Agents went to Polly's school to talk with teachers and students in the hopes that somebody might have some useful information. Investigators canvassed the neighborhood in pairs, asking if anyone had seen anything suspicious that night. One by one, they interviewed all of Polly's neighbors. Several people recalled seeing a stranger around the neighborhood that fit the description given by the girls. Thomas Georges and his friends were on their way to the video store at around 9 o'clock that night when he noticed a stranger standing in the shadows in front of Polly's house. Thomas knew everyone in his neighborhood, but he had never seen this man before. Returning home a few minutes later, the boys saw that the stranger was still there. The description Thomas gave to the authorities matched the suspect they were looking for. Sean Bush was playing video games with some friends who lived in a small rental cottage directly behind Polly's house. It was about 10:30 when Sean happened to glance out the window. He was surprised to see a strange man on the back porch of Polly's house. He appeared to be going for the back door. His description of the man also fit that of the suspect. There were others who saw the suspicious man that night, but unfortunately none of them alerted the authorities. As Petaluma Police Chief Patrick Parks explains, time was working against them.
In stranger abduction cases of small children, there is no more critical factor than time. Time is absolutely of the essence. And for that reason, you have to get out as many resources as you can. You have to put out the word as far as wide as you can. You have to involve as many agencies as you can, get them focused, get their efforts channeled, and hopefully bring about a successful resolution.
While officers continued to comb the neighborhood, FBI investigators began executing the standard operating procedure in cases like these. After eliminating family and friends as suspects, they focused on ex-cons who were registered as sexual offenders throughout Sonoma County. Gradually, they branched out to surrounding counties, carefully questioning and investigating each registrant. But nothing turned up.
This is a hard case to believe that it even happened. There's 3 girls, they're in a slumber party. They're playing games in their bedroom, in their home, in a typical community, in a typical city. And somebody can walk into your home, the sanctity of the home, the security of your home, and take your daughter is if it wasn't impossible, was inconceivable.
The following day, the search for Polly Klaas had escalated into the largest manhunt in the nation. A massive community volunteer network was formed to assist authorities. While hundreds of citizens searched, others passed out flyers, trying to cover the entire city as quickly as possible. Back at the FBI's Trace Evidence Lab in Washington, D.C., forensic expert Chris Allen was carefully surveying the items collected from Polly's house.
I noticed that in untying the pieces of bindings, the thin nylon strips of bindings that were used to tie up Polly's girlfriends, that they had jagged edges to them. And I was able to line them up perfectly so that I was able to determine that these all came from one piece of cloth originally, and it was a piece of cloth like a lady's nightgown or a slip material.
Other pieces of evidence found in Polly's room were not so easy to classify. Tiny fibers collected with the electrostatic dust print machine proved to be a challenge to identify. After painstaking examination and comparison, Allen concluded that they had come from the interior carpet of an automobile. Eliminating the cars that could be accounted for at Polly's house, Alan suspected that these carpet fibers were most likely from the kidnapper's car. One more item Alan found was a little more personal to the suspect.
I found in the vacuuming of the area rug that was in Polly's bedroom that she was playing on with her girlfriends, a dark brown, forcibly removed head hair. And I say forcibly removed because it had a 3 or 4 millimeter root sheath on it, actually skin material that comes out of the scalp when the hair is forcibly pulled or yanked out.
If Polly had pulled a hair out of the suspect's head, it was evident that she didn't go without a struggle. But even a hair with DNA evidence couldn't bring investigators any closer to finding a suspect. The palm print lifted from the bedpost was sent to Michael J. Smith, a fingerprint specialist with the FBI. Examining the print under laser light, Smith determined that the print had enough ridge detail to photograph. But the light emitted from the laser turned the print orange, and Smith needed to capture a black print on a white background. He instructed the photographer to reverse the color so that the finished print would appear the way it would on a fingerprint card. Now the print was indelible and could be filed until a suspect was apprehended. Investigators had unearthed some solid evidence, but it wasn't enough. Time was running out, and Polly Klaas was still out there, somewhere. "48 hours after the abduction of Polly Klaas, her father, Mark, got a call.
Polly?
It sounded like Polly.
Okay, honey.
She told her father that she was in a hotel room somewhere, and that her abductor had stepped out for a moment.
Tell me where you are. Polly!
Then the
Polly!
line went dead. It offered the first glimmer of hope. But unfortunately, since Mark's line wasn't set up for a trace,
Detective Fryer,
all
please.
authorities could do was wait for another call. Word of the abduction spread rapidly. In 2 days, 50,000 flyers had been distributed. Community volunteers quickly organized a search command center to work in tandem with the police and FBI. It was an unprecedented grassroots effort. A telephone bank was manned 24 hours a day to field calls and tips. A copy of every lead that was phoned in was shared with the FBI and Petaluma police. Before long, the search center had screened 60,000 calls. Out of those, authorities were compelled to follow up on over 12,000 leads. Processing that amount of data would have been virtually impossible without help from an FBI computer processor.
The FBI just happened to have the Rapid Start team. It was a relatively new concept with the FBI where on an investigation with a high volume of information, we would computerize that information, essentially triage the value of the investigative leads and make the assignments and track the progress.
Even with so many leads, there was one in particular that investigators were anxious to follow up on. When Mark Klaas received the first call, the FBI was powerless to do anything about it. The second time she called, they were ready.
Hello.
Like the previous call, it sounded like Polly,
how are you,
and
honey?
she could only talk for a short time before she had to hang up.
Where are you?
But it was long enough for
okay?
authorities to make a trace.
Polly. Got it.
The FBI had traced the call to a house 30 miles away. There hadn't been enough time to collect an army of agents. The job would have to be handled by a few. But something wasn't right. This was just a normal family home. There was no sign of Polly or her abductor. A terrible realization dawned on the agents. When they sat down with one of the girls in the house, she confessed to making the calls. She admitted that friends from school had dared her to call and impersonate Polly. The entire incident had been a cruel joke.
This was the only indication we had after a week's time that Polly just might be alive still, and we all were poised and hopeful that this would yield a solution and her safe recovery. Of course it didn't.
In mid-October, Kate and Jillian were brought in to give another description of the man who tied them up. A highly acclaimed forensic artist was flown in to make a second sketch.
It was pretty well cut.
The artist was known for relaxing witnesses enough to coax an accurate description from them. The girls were less stressed than they had been that night, and were able to give her more to work with.
No, they were
The second sketch was much more precise. This sketch looked like a person. New flyers were distributed immediately. There was no time to waste.
But if you look back at true stranger abductions, we have this rule of thirds. The children who are abducted, typically 1/3 are recovered alive, 1/3 are recovered dead, and 1/3 are simply never heard from ever again. That's what we faced in this particular investigation, and that, I think, was one of our motivations to keep the sustained effort up.
After a reward had been offered for Polly's return, authorities received a call demanding a $10,000 ransom. They traced the call to a Petaluma apartment building. This time a SWAT team showed up in force. They were not going to take any chances.
FBI! FBI! Come on! Down! 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 Sit down! 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 Cover!
Once again, authorities and the family had been fooled.
Put your hands behind your back. Don't move. Do not move. Going on. Don't move.
20-year-old James Hurd was arrested for attempted extortion and posing as a kidnapper. It was a crushing blow for everyone.
It became very frustrating. It was certainly distracting towards the main thrust of the investigation, but you had to deal with it. There was no way around it. You could not ignore those things. And it certainly chewed up a lot of time and resource.
The family had been especially discouraged. A letter Polly's parents wrote to the kidnapper was published in the October 17th San Francisco Examiner. Whoever you are, wherever you are, please return Polly to her family. She belongs here. We miss Polly so much. We miss the twinkle in her eye and her sweet humor. We long to see her beautiful smile and hear her musical voice. They also addressed Polly. Our darling, if you can read this, please know that your mommy and daddy love you so much, and we will continue to search for you until we can hold you safely in our loving arms again.
I don't think I ever lost hope. So I had numerous contacts with Mark Klaas, with Eve, with members of the family, and that was a question posed to me many times. And my response was no. We have not lost hope. We will not lose hope.
Across the country, people wanted to see Polly brought home. Banners sprang up, and Americans began a candlelight vigil. Thousands donned ribbons of lavender, Polly's favorite color, to show their support of the search.
We conducted searches during the day, during the night. We had a 24-hour operation going. We conducted searches sunny days, on foggy days, rainy nights. Whenever the information came in, we reacted to that because in a case like this, physical evidence is crucial.
The search never stopped. The Navy and search and rescue experts joined the thousands of volunteers who were constantly looking. Police and volunteer task forces worked tirelessly. But it would be nearly 2 months before anything broke. November 28, 1993. It was 2 months after Polly Klaas was kidnapped that authorities got their first real lead. In Sonoma County, a sheriff's deputy was called out to the house of Dana Jaffe. It sat at the end of a long, winding drive off Pythian Road. Dana had been out inspecting her property when she noticed something unusual and thought it might be of use to investigators. She led the deputy through a densely wooded area to a clearing just a few yards from the long, winding drive to her house. Scattered in the woods were a few items that seemed somewhat suspicious. There was a large piece of silk cloth that had been fashioned into what appeared to be a hood. A couple of strips of packing tape were on the ground.
Yeah, it was about 2 months ago. We couldn't do anything about it. They ran his place.
A pair of young girl's tights had been tied into a knot, and human hair was entangled in the knot. Other debris surrounded the area. Then Dana recalled the night she'd caught a trespasser on her property not far from where they stood. It was nearly 2 months before. It all started when Dana's babysitter, Shannon Lynch, had left Dana's house and was making her way back down the long driveway. A man was walking down the middle of the private drive. His stranded Pinto was off to the side. He said that he was stuck and insisted that she get out of her car and help. He also wanted to know what was up the drive. But Shannon immediately sensed something wasn't right. She'd later describe him as looking like a wild man. She drove on, leaving him there, determined to get to a phone. Shannon found a payphone about 2 miles down the road and hurried to call her friend. She was anxious to get a hold of Dana and warn her of the scary man trespassing on her land. Dana didn't waste any time. She grabbed her daughter and a baseball bat and took off down the hill. She saw the car, like Shannon had said, but the strange man was nowhere in sight. She continued down into town and called the police. A few minutes after midnight, 2 Sonoma County Sheriff's deputies showed up. Dana explained that she didn't really want the intruder arrested for trespassing. She just wanted him off her property.
Yeah, it's fine.
The deputies found the trespasser, a little agitated. There was alcohol on his breath, and he was sweating profusely. There were bits of leaves and brush in his hair, as if he'd been rolling around on the ground.
Make sure you're okay and everything. We'll help you get out of the situation.
He told them that he'd been out sightseeing when he realized that he was on private property. When he tried to turn around, he got his car stuck on the side of the drive. He blurted out that he'd been under the car trying to free it, but the deputies didn't believe it. The way his car was trapped, there wasn't enough room for a person to get underneath.
You gotta move on, you gotta cross 10, 2, 1003, 1000.
The deputies administered some roadside sobriety tests, but he passed them all. Looking in his car, they found some cans of beer in a plastic bag and a small duffel bag in the back seat. When they asked him if he'd been drinking, he actually opened a beer and began to drink it.
You'll need to pour that out, okay? Pour that out. Go ahead and pour the beer out, all right? We can't let you be drinking any of that.
They immediately made him pour it out and then told him they wanted to pat him down. He became extremely upset.
Just leave me alone. Just keep that stuff away from me, all right? Put that cigarette out for me. Now, here you
To
go.
make him comply, The deputies told him they would be within their rights to run him in on trespassing. After he'd heard this, he calmed down considerably. They searched him carefully and continued questioning him, but could find nothing incriminating. He was just odd. The deputies remained suspicious, but when they ran his license, it checked out. His driving record was clean, and he had passed the sobriety tests. They had held him for about 45 minutes already, and they had no legal means to detain him any further. There was nothing left to do but pull his car out and send him on his way.
Well, those look like tights, and they look like...
That had been 2 months ago, the same night that Polly Klaas had been abducted.
Nothing good, that's for sure.
A hood, bindings, a young girl's pair of tights. It was too much of a coincidence. Putting it all together, the deputy quickly put a call in to the Petaluma Police Department.
Dispatch. I'm up here on.
Within an hour, Detective Mike Meese and Agent Ed Fryer arrived to check it out.
I'll never forget the scene. It was late at night then. By this time, Mike Meese and I are standing up on the hillside there on Pythian on the road. It was beginning to get a little misty and foggy, and the rain started to come down. And we looked at each other, and we knew in our hearts that we had basically uncovered a very critical crime scene, that this was going to lead us to the resolution of this case.
After the evidence was collected, investigators immediately began searching the Pythian Road site for any signs of Polly.
We spent days searching the mountain with over 300 volunteers. I believe we had 25 to 30 search dogs, and we conducted extensive ground searches for Polly, believing that she was still alive, which was the premise that we were working on.
As the search commenced, everything began to snowball. Authorities checked with the Sonoma County Police to get the full report of the incident that happened on Dana Jaffe's property. The man deputies had questioned was Richard Allen Davis. Accessing his criminal record revealed he had recently been paroled from an 8-year sentence for kidnapping.
What we learned about Davis initially was 1976 he had been arrested for robbery and kidnapping and assault with intent to commit rape. We learned in 1978 he had been arrested for another kidnapping, as well as a couple of counts of assault with a deadly weapon. 1984 he'd been arrested for a kidnapping case, assault with a deadly weapon, including the use of a firearm, and armed robbery. You start reading these reports and realize, you know, hey, this guy's a bad actor. This is an individual certainly more than capable of being involved in a crime like this.
The arrest photo on file matched the girl's description. His mother lived in Petaluma, giving him reason to have been there. The pieces were falling into place. The items discovered near Pythian Road were immediately flown to forensic specialist Chris Allen in Washington. Of the most interest was a strip of cloth that was found in the woods. Allen was quickly able to confirm what detectives had suspected.
Essentially what we're trying to do is establish whether or not the cut edges would line up or match. The middle strips represent the fabric that was found at Polly's bedroom, which were used to bind Polly's girlfriends. Subsequently, on the second submission, we received the cloth that was found at the Pythian Road site. These all fit together like a puzzle with the edges and the pieces of fabric matching up end to end.
The strips meant more than likely Polly Klaas had been out at Dana Jaffe's after her abduction. Without a doubt, Richard Allen Davis had been there too. Though it wasn't enough to arrest Davis for kidnapping, detectives felt if they could just get him in custody, they could quickly gather the evidence they needed to tie him to Polly's disappearance.
Everything else fell away and we focused on what we had with Mr. Davis, what happened out there at Pythian Road, and what we were going to do next.
When investigators discovered Davis had an outstanding warrant for breaking parole and DUI, they decided to bring him in. But he wasn't at home when they arrived. Then a deputy sheriff who was securing a perimeter around the area stopped a van. At the wheel was Richard Allen Davis. When the deputy realized who he had, he calmly called it in to the investigators back at the house.
Is there a problem, officer?
No, sir. Just sit tight, okay?
Authorities reported to the scene, and Detective Meese approached the van and asked Davis to step out.
Step out of the van?
He informed him that he was under arrest for violation of his parole.
No. I'm Detective Meese. I'm arresting you for
One thing I think it's important to understand how Richard Allen Davis was taken in custody, because it was such a low-key event, and because Mike Meese went ahead and handcuffed him. He did it in a very professional way, and he started a rapport going with Richard Allen Davis that later was very useful in bringing resolution to the case.
It had been 2 months since Kate and Jillian had seen the man who took Polly, Klaas, but they had no trouble picking him out of a lineup.
Number one, step forward, please.
Even without the beard, his was a face they could never forget.
Number one, step back, please.
Though he'd been arrested for parole violation, Davis was questioned about the kidnapping. He vehemently denied any involvement, but authorities let Davis know that if he wanted to talk, the door was open.
So I took Davis into the hallway and I told him, I said, hey, look, what you need to know is we've got all the physical evidence it takes to make this case, and all you're looking at is a kidnapping right now. So if you want to talk about it, you got to let me know. And he made a non-committal response, didn't want to talk. And I remember patting my pockets looking for a business card, didn't have a business card with me, and I said, you know, I'm going to leave my name and number with those guys, meaning the correctional deputies, and if you ever want to talk about it, you know, give me a call.
Back at the FBI latent fingerprint lab, Mike Smith was comparing the palm print found in Polly's bedroom with one that had been taken from Davis since his arrest. This was a crucial piece of evidence. Matching the two prints would undoubtedly link Davis to the abduction. After careful examination, the results were called in to Agent Fryer.
I just got a call from FBI laboratory. They matched Davis's palm print to a palm print taken off of Polly's bedroom, or her bedpost. It was again one of those moments where there's butterflies in my stomach. Again, realized that this was really very powerful evidence. So I hung up the phone, and again there was a lot of noise and commotion in the command post. I stood up and I asked everybody, "Can I have your attention, please? Can I have quiet for a moment?" I said, "We just got confirmation from our laboratory that we've matched this palm print taken from the bedroom to Davis. We can place him in the bedroom." And there was just a huge cheer from everybody. Papers were flying. It was just great news to everybody.
This is it. It's concrete. He was in her bedroom. We can prove it. We had him nailed down.
Though news of the matching print had gone public, Davis was being held in isolation and had not heard anything about it. Then one day, a friend of his showed up for a visit. He urged Davis to talk to authorities and tell them where Polly was. But Davis continued to deny responsibility. Then his friend gave him the news the rest of the nation had already heard. It came as a complete surprise. Davis realized it was going to be impossible to explain how his palm print got in Polly's bedroom. There was only one thing he could do.
In Davis's mind, he's now got to do something, and that is try to make whatever deal he can make with the authorities, because we know that he was in Polly's bedroom. We can put him there.
While on his way to the massive search for Polly near Pythian Road, Detective Meese was paged to call the jail. This was the moment everyone had been waiting for, and Meese was anxious about what he might find out.
After this wait, Davis comes on the phone, and I recognize the voice. So I know it's him, and I said, he says to me, hey, I screwed up. I screwed up big time.
Detective Meese and Special Agent Larry Taylor met with Davis in the interrogation room, where Davis related the details of the night of October 1st. Though he was living in something like a halfway house, he had applied for an overnight pass to go visit his mother in Petaluma. Unable to find her house, he had a few beers and walked the streets of Polly's neighborhood. At one point, he was stopped by a man who wanted to sell him some marijuana. He decided to go ahead and buy the joint. In Davis's own words, he got really buzzed and went to the store for more beer. He soon found himself wandering the neighborhood aimlessly. He wasn't sure where he was or what he was doing. But Davis had come to the neighborhood prepared. He'd brought a bag packed with bindings and tape. Forensic experts were able to determine that he had cut the strips with a pair of scissors, a fact which implies intent. Then Davis said he randomly picked a house on the street and crawled into an open window. He remembered hearing TV voices and said he may have picked up a knife from the kitchen. He said he didn't remember anything after that. He claimed the next thing he knew, he was driving in his car and was surprised to find a young girl sitting next to him. She was complaining that her hands were tingling. According to Davis, he adjusted the straps for her and drove around wondering what he had done and what he should do next. Then he drove off the side of the road and got the car stuck. Once he realized he was stuck for good, he says he got Polly out of the car and carried her up a steep embankment about 30 yards away.
Get out of the car!
He planned to leave her in the darkness until he could figure out a way to free the car. The rest of Davis's story about what happened at Pythian Road matched the witnesses' accounts. At the time of the incident, the bulletin about Polly's abduction was just going out over police radios. But the deputies were tuned to a different frequency and would not have heard it even if they had been in their cars. They ran his license, but the equipment they had at that time was only able to give a cursory printout of Davis' driving record. It couldn't generate his criminal record. They found nothing they could hold him on.
What I want you to do is, all right, I'm gonna follow my finger.
Davis recalled how the deputies pulled his car out and escorted him to the main highway. But he claims that he waited for 15 or 30 minutes and returned to the site to find Polly. Then he just drove around. At some point, he realized he had to get rid of her. At long last, authorities had found out what they'd been desperate to know. Polly Klaas was dead. and Richard Allen Davis was the man responsible. Davis agreed to take them to the site in a deserted area of Cloverdale where he had left the body. It was night, but inspectors felt the need to confirm Davis's story couldn't wait until daybreak. He led them to a field near an abandoned lumber mill. Out in the field, under some boards, investigators found the body of Polly Klaas.
It was an odd feeling. You're in the presence of somebody like Davis, and just a few yards away is what's left of a very beautiful, innocent 12-year-old.
The Polly Klaas case was special because people cared. Because the whole community stepped forward and said, this is the last child you're going to take. And that this is our child, and that we are going to go out and look for her until we find her.
The case wouldn't come to trial until 1996. But after 10 weeks in the courtroom, a jury found Davis guilty on 10 counts, including kidnapping, robbery, burglary, murder, and attempting to commit a lewd act on a child. The latter charge Davis continued to deny during the entire trial. Investigators strongly believed that despite Davis's testimony, Polly was already dead at the time deputies helped him with his car. He was sentenced to death and continues to sit on death row at San Quentin Prison. Polly Klaas left behind a legacy to save other lives. The way missing persons cases are handled has changed forever since the investigation. Law enforcement databases are linked to different agencies providing vital information to multiple jurisdictions. Missing persons bulletins are now sent out over all police channels. At routine pullovers and traffic stops, officers can access not only driving histories but criminal records as well. Implementation of the 3 strikes you're out legislation was a direct result of the case, as was the push to expedite the appeals process in murder cases. And a foundation established in Polly's name aids the search for missing children.
It looked just a little fuzzy on the website.
Involvement of the FBI was critical to bringing resolution to this case. Had they not come in and gotten involved early on, it's doubtful we would ever have had resolution, or certainly that it would have been as quickly as it was, even though it seemed like a long time.
The unique partnership that was formed between local police and the FBI set a precedent that continues to this day.